3 years ago, Jane, signed that gilded cage contract to pay for my mother's surgery. Adrian, the most powerful man in Riverdale, needed a stand-in who resembled his first love. Like a captive bird, I obediently played the shadow in his heart. Now, Mom was cured, and I'd banked enough. Time to fly the coop. But I wouldn't resign, too easy on Adrian. I'd make him get fed up and fire me. Per the contract, he'd owe $3 million in severance. Make a man weary of a woman? Easier than breathing. Adrian, your favorite braised pork. At dinner I beamed, sliding the last succulent chunk into my bowl and shoving a plate of bitter melon his way. Have more, cools the liver. His fingers paused on the chopsticks, those deep eyes lifted from the bowl to my face. I pretended not to notice the tiny crease between his brows and kept demolishing what should have been his pork. Jane. The low timbre made my chopsticks wobble. You care this much about my health? I almost choked on my rice. Oh, of course. I care about Adrian the most. He studied me for several seconds, then, to my shock, picked up a slice of bitter melon and ate it. The man who never touched the stuff swallowed without flinching. Tastes fine. He dabbed his mouth, gaze meaningful. Thanks for caring. Step 1 of my plan, flop. A big project of Adrian's had cratered. He spent night after night in the study, the ashtray overflowing. Prime time for my act. I breezed in humming, fruit platter in hand. Adrian, fruit break, he lifted his head from the files, bluish smudges beneath his eyes. I parked myself beside him and kept humming off-key. Jane. Horse. Do you know what time it is? 2 a.m. sharp. I fluttered my lashes. Couldn't sleep, thought I'd keep you company. Unexpectedly, he yanked me into his arms, rested his chin on my crown, and sighed, exhausted, stopped singing, but thanks. The thud of his heart through his shirt scattered my wits. What's wrong with him? I'm trying to annoy him here. Time for the kill shot. A songbird's duty, keep her owner blissful in body and mind. So when Adrian came home reeking of scotch and pinned me to the couch, I was ready. He untied my silk robe and revealed granny flannel long johns. Adrian froze. What is this? I get cold. I blinked innocent. He narrowed his eyes. The next day 10 sets of lacy lingerie arrived. Yet when he pounced again, I'd layered every skimpy piece over the flannel. Adrian. Heaters busted, saving power. I was righteous. To my amazement, he laughed. Short on cash? Before I could answer, my phone pinged, 300 grand had hit the account. Me, honestly, being a canary ain't bad, really. Just as money nearly corroded my resolve, the game changer dropped. Adrian's moon-white beacon, Vivian, was back in town. Word said I kept my perch only because I faintly resembled her. Now the original had returned, the stand-in should bow out, right? I waited, giddy, a week, a month. Adrian acted as if he'd forgotten. Finally, over dinner, I casually brought up, I heard Locke is back. Aren't you going to see her? Adrian's steak knife halted. Who? Vivian, your first love. I watched his face, cautious. He set the cutlery down, tipped my chin up. Jane, are you jealous? Me? I just thought you'd prefer someone like her. I stammered. His gaze went dark. He leaned in, breath brushing my ear. If I really wanted her, would I settle for a stand-in? My brain blue-screened. That logic checked out. Then why keep me? My heart hammered. He nipped my earlobe. Because I like you, Jane. Not any shadow, just you. At that instant, my meticulously drawn escape map suddenly felt optional. The day Adrian's mother came, I was on the balcony watering a half-dead pothose. When the doorbell rang, I assumed Adrian had forgotten his key, until the monitor showed an elegant woman, 70% Adrian in the eyes. Eleanor? My watering can almost fell. She never crossed the threshold. From her Birkin she drew a check like tossing alms, 50 million. Leave my son. My mind blanked, pure drama jackpot. Per script I should sob we were true love, wait till she upped it to 60. We really, I pinched myself, forced 2 tears. 60. Eleanor cut in, impatient. Hits your account tonight. My tears shut off like a faucet. Great. Wire or paper? Eleanor looked at me the way people look at a filthy rat. She shoved the check into my hand. Before tonight, I want to see proof you've left Riverdale. She shut the door. I stared at the string of zeros on the check, my fingers shaking out of control. 60 million, enough for Mom and me to live in comfort for the rest of our lives. I ought to be happy. So why did my chest feel this tight? I shook my head and started packing. I booked the earliest flight to Milan and left Adrian a tear-stained farewell letter. Dear Adrian, by the time you read this I'll be on a plane to somewhere far away. In it I cast myself as the tragic heroine who sacrifices her love, claiming I was leaving so I wouldn't come between him and Vivian. By the final line I'd almost convinced myself. Then a gust of wind slipped through the unlatched window and whirled the letter straight out into the night. Whatever. It was only a performance. I checked the time, hurried out, and raced to the airport. Only when the plane lifted off did the iron band around my ribs loosen. Through the porthole Riverdale shrank to a toy city, and I suddenly remembered the first time I saw Adrian. The downpour that day had been monstrous. I stood drenched in the lobby of Sterling Tower, waiting to interview for the special assistant position. When Adrian stepped out of the elevator and his gaze landed on my face, his expression visibly changed. Later I learned I looked like his college first love. Ma'am, please switch off electronic devices. The flight attendant's voice yanked me back. I powered down my phone, no message from Adrian. Good. He hadn't noticed I'd run. 13 hours later we touched down at Milan Malpensa. I drew a deep breath, dragged my suitcase toward the exit, and couldn't resist a Twitter post, *the light skiff has already crossed 10,000 mountains*. I snapped a photo of the overhead sign. I could practically see Adrian's livid face when the post hit his feed. The thought made me laugh out loud. My laugh died the instant I cleared arrivals. Backlit against the windows, a tall figure leaned against a pillar, phone in hand, my Twitter post glowing on the screen. Adrian. My blood froze. How could he be here? I had definitely. Ready for your brand new life? Adrian closed in, voice like crushed ice. Only then did I notice the red in his eyes, the wrinkles in his suit. He'd flown straight after me. I stepped back on instinct. He seized my wrist. Jane, he said through his teeth, you're unbelievable. He herded me into a black Mercedes-Benz, slammed the door, and said something to the chauffeur. The air inside felt vacuum-sealed. So, fancy meeting you in Milan on business? I forced a laugh. Adrian scoffed, pulled my tablet from his pocket, the one I'd forgotten in the penthouse, and woke the screen to my Twitter drafts. Under the tag escape plan were months of scattered complaints, Adrian's zombie face again, who's he trying to scare? Day 1001 as a caged canary, day 1002 of wanting to quit. 60 million in the bag. Milan, here I come. My face drained of color. He'd Seen everything? Explain. Only that one word. I clenched the hem of my coat, sudden injustice swelling inside. Explain what? It's exactly what you read. I never wanted to be anyone's stand-in. I've had 3 years of it, enough. Stand-in? Adrian's brows snapped together. Who told you were a stand-in? Isn't it obvious? My voice quavered. You chose me because I look like Vivian. Adrian's expression contorted strangely. He pinched my chin, forcing me to meet his eyes. Jane, I met Vivian junior year. But you, he paused. I noticed you the very first week of freshman orientation. My mind went blank. Then your family had the accident and you dropped out. When I found you again, you didn't remember me. He let go, voice quiet. The whole replacement story was just an excuse to stay near you. I couldn't speak. Orientation? Freshman year? I had no memory of, then. Vivian. Only a classmate, never some moonlit first love. Adrian rubbed his temples. Jane, these 3 years, did you really think I'd pamper a substitute like this? I thought of the bitter melon he'd eaten for me, the weight of his head on my shoulder when he was exhausted, the ridiculous thermal underwear. My heart folded in on itself. Then why didn't you tell me sooner? I whispered. Adrian was silent so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Because I was terrified. Finally the words slipped out, barely audible. Terrified that once you knew the truth, you wouldn't even pretend to love me anymore. In that instant I saw something I'd never seen in the man who terrified Riverdale's boardrooms: naked vulnerability. The Mercedes stopped in front of a luxury residence in central Milan. Adrian climbed out first, then extended his hand toward me. The choice is yours, Jane. His voice was calm now. Take the 60 million and vanish, or stay and let me finish telling you our story. I stared at his outstretched hand and suddenly recalled that rainy night 3 years ago when he'd offered it and pulled me out of the mud. This time, I placed my trembling hand in his. Adrian's Milan penthouse was so vast it felt suffocating. I stood at the floor-to-ceiling window, staring at the unfamiliar cityscape beyond, fingers absently tracing the rim of my glass. Drink some water. Adrian handed me a glass of warm water, our fingers brushed for an instant, then sprang apart. In 3 years, this was the first time I'd seen him like this, uncertain, cautious Adrian. The Adrian who ruled boardrooms with lightning speed now looked like a child who'd done something wrong. You said, we met in college? I asked softly. Adrian's eyes darkened. He walked to the desk, slipped a photo from his wallet, and held it out. A group of college kids stood beneath blooming cherry trees. I squinted. In the corner was a ponytailed girl, me, freshman year, painfully young. And half a step behind me, a tall guy, younger, but unmistakably, after the welcome gala, first lit club meeting, Adrian said quietly. You were the new recruit, my roommate dragged me along. I stared until my temples throbbed. Fragments flashed, bumping into him in the library, shared smiles in the cafeteria, huddling under one umbrella in the downpour. Why didn't you tell me? My voice shook. Adrian gave a wan smile. I tried. Before your mother got sick, I asked you out 3 times. The last time, you said yes. My heart lurched. In the haze I could almost see a tall boy inviting me to an art show, but Mom had collapsed that afternoon. I stood him up and then, after the accident at home, you dropped out. Adrian stepped closer, hesitated, then brushed away tears I hadn't noticed. When I finally found you again, you'd forgotten me. The stand-in story was the only way I could get near you. I jerked my head up. So from the start you were only repaying a debt. Adrian exhaled. Your mother once saved my father. I wanted to help, but I knew you'd never take charity. The words detonated inside my skull. Mom had saved Sterling? When? Reading my silence, Adrian went on, 10 years ago, a Sterling construction site accident. Your mother was the on-duty nurse. She dragged my father out from under a collapsed scaffold. My hands began to shake. Mom had worked site jobs, true, she'd never mentioned this. So these 3 years. My voice was barely air. At first, to repay a debt. Adrian looked straight at me. But later. His Adam's apple bobbed. Later I realized I'd already fallen for you, Jane. Not because of the debt, not because of your face, but because of you, stubborn, sharp, fragile yet pretending to be steel. My tears broke free. Every shard clicked into place, why bonuses always hit my account the day before Mom's bills, why he never truly forced me, why he let every petty tantrum slide. A phone shrilled, slashing the moment. Adrian frowned at the screen and answered. What is it? Urgent voice on the line, his face darkened. When he hung up, he said, Vivian just landed in Milan. I froze. Vivian? Now? She isn't, I struggled. Never a true love. Adrian pinched the bridge of his nose. But someone's behind her, my rival, Victor. They want to use her to seize Sterling Corporation. A light bulb burst in my head. So all that coldness was to protect you. Adrian smiled bitterly. Victor somehow learned you mattered to me. I was afraid he'd hurt you. The knowledge crushed my chest. I'd misunderstood so much. What do we do now? I asked. Before he could answer, the doorbell rang. We exchanged glances. He motioned me into the bedroom, then went to open the door. Through the crack I saw Vivian on the threshold, no longer immaculate, her face taut with panic. Adrian, something's wrong. Victor knows you flew to Milan. He sent men to grab Jane's mother. My blood iced. Mom! I burst out, snatching Vivian's arm. What did you say? Where's my mother? Vivian hadn't expected me, her color drained. Jane? She looked at Adrian, understanding flashed, and her expression twisted. You too. Where is my mother? I was nearly screaming. Victor thinks you took the money and ran, that Adrian came to drag you back. Vivian spoke fast. He sent people to her nursing home, to use her to force Adrian to abandon the South River project. I didn't wait. I grabbed my phone and dialed Mom. No answer. Adrian was already on another call. Get a team to Green Hill Nursing Home, protect Sterling immediately. He hung up and turned to Vivian. Why come to warn us? Vivian lowered her eyes. I'm tired of being used. Victor promised me Sterling stock, but he doesn't care about anyone. She lifted her gaze, tears glinting. Sorry, Adrian. And sorry to you, Jane. I looked at the woman who had once made me so jealous and suddenly realized she was nothing more than a pawn. Adrian's phone rang again. After he answered, the tension on his face visibly eased. They got him? Good, hand him to the police. The moment he hung up, he turned to me. Your mother's safe. We intercepted Victor's people. My legs buckled, I almost dropped to the floor. Adrian caught me, his arms warm and solid. I have to go back, I whispered. I have to see Mom. The jet's already waiting, he murmured, stroking my back. Wheels up in 2 hours. Vivian had slipped out at some point. Only the two of us were left in the penthouse, the air thick with everything we hadn't said. Jane. Adrian dropped to one knee and took my hand. These 3 years, I went about it all wrong. I shouldn't have used the stand-in excuse to keep you near, shouldn't have hidden the truth, and I never should have let you feel like nothing more than a transaction. I stared into the deep sincerity in his eyes, and my heart fluttered. I'm not asking you to forgive me right now, he went on, but give me a chance to start over, not as patron and pet, but as two equals. Looking at the man I'd once both feared and clung to, I finally saw my own heart clearly. Adrian, I drew a shaky breath, do you know why I kept trying to run? He shook his head. Because I was terrified, my voice trembled, that one day you'd tire of me and toss me aside like last season's coat. So I thought if I ran first, at least it wouldn't hurt as much. Adrian's gaze softened beyond measure. He drew me gently into his arms. Never again, Jane. Never. On the flight home I fell asleep against his shoulder. In my dream I was back in college, watching a tall boy sneak an umbrella into a girl's backpack, weather app had said downpour. Some threads, it turns out, were woven long ago. 3 months later, Sterling Corp's annual gala. I no longer hovered in Adrian's shadow, I stood beside him as project partner. Together we'd launched a new charity fund to help girls forced to drop out when family crises hit. Nervous? Adrian squeezed my hand from the side of the stage. I shook my head and stepped up to the microphone. Under the spotlights I saw Mom in the front row, fully recovered, Vivian, now one of our volunteers, and Adrian's parents, Eleanor, offering me an approving smile. A year ago I was ready to bolt at any second, my voice carried through the hall, but today I know that sometimes the cage you think you're in is fate's way of giving you a second chance. Below the stage, Adrian watched me, stars in his eyes. I knew then, I wouldn't be running anymore. Sugar overload alert extra, Adrian's care, feeding, manual ever since he retrieved Jane in Milan and upgraded her contract from Gilded Bird to life partner. Adrian seemed to flip a hidden switch. The frosty, aloof Adrian? Gone. Jane, come here. Morning light poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Jane sat cross-legged on the pricey rug, tablet in hand, researching new recipes, her latest whim. Too busy to look up, she answered. What? I'm working. The next second the world spun. He whisked the tablet away and scooped her into his arms. Jane yelped and instinctively flung her arms around his neck. Adrian! Put me down! He carried her like priceless porcelain toward the dining area, smirking. You wouldn't come, so I fetched you. Breakfast is getting cold. He set her gently onto the cushioned chair, brushed a kiss to her forehead, and sat beside her as if they'd done this 1,000 times. Jane hid her face, ears scarlet. You never used to be like this. I didn't understand before, he replied, peeling a soft-boiled egg with surgical grace. Now I do, keep the wife fed, hugged, and happy. He placed the smooth white egg in her bowl and slid over a cup of warm milk. Try this, new dairy farm, supposedly creamier. Jane stared at the flawless egg, then at the domestic god in front of her, sweetness fizzing in her chest. Someone's gotten good at this. Adrian arched a brow and leaned in, voice low and dangerously magnetic. I've mastered other services too, darling. Care for a demonstration? Say, the Up in the Air special? Jane's mouthful of milk nearly went airborne. Adrian! It's broad daylight. Oh. He brushed a drop of milk from her lip, eyes darkening. So you're saying tonight is fine? Jane, she'd never outsass him. The Up in the Air joke became Adrian's new favorite. One afternoon Jane was in the walk-in closet sorting seasonal clothes. On tiptoe, she tried to shove a crate of cashmere sweaters onto the top shelf. Too heavy, too high, she wobbled. Tisk. A soft click came from the doorway. Jane hadn't even turned when she felt her waist seized and her feet leave the floor. Adrian had slipped in without a sound. Now, from behind, he cradled her hips and lifted her effortlessly. Ah! Startled, she instinctively locked her arms around his head. Where does it go? His voice drifted up, amused. T-top shelf, all the way in. Jane felt dizzy. The view of her walk-in closet from this height was oddly thrilling. He followed the order, sliding the box into place. Then, instead of setting her down, he spun her in a slow circle. Adrian, she shrieked, tightening her grip on his neck, half laughing, half furious. Put me down. I'm not a toddler. In my arms, you can be. He tilted his head back, eyes shining with open fondness. He even bounced her once. Lighter than last week. Guess today's feeding session wasn't big enough. Adrian! Flustered, she reached to pinch his cheeks. He caught her hand and pressed a kiss to her palm before finally lowering her, though he still kept her tucked against him, chin resting on her hair. This is nice, he sighed, content. Jane leaned against the solid wall of his chest, the steady thump of his heart melting the last of her annoyance into syrup. She mumbled, nice how? You treat me like your kid. He agreed readily, voice low and smiling, then I'll keep you forever. My little princess. Adrian's clinginess didn't stay home. That afternoon Jane, feeling adventurous, baked a batch of new pastries, arranged them in a lacquered bento, and rode the elevator to the Sterling executive floor for a surprise snack attack. Chinemo, Adrian's assistant, took one look at her and mouthed a silent hallelujah. Sterling, thank heavens. He just got out of a board meeting and the barometric pressure in there is lethal. Jane gave an understanding nod and tapped on the frosted glass. Come. His voice was sub-zero. She stepped inside. Behind the acre of desk Adrian sat scowling at a report, profile sharp enough to slice glass, aura broadcasting a clear stayback radius. Jane breezed over and set the bento down with a bright clack. The instant he recognized her, the frost cracked, the corners of his mouth curved upward. Decided to grace me with your presence? Delivering a portable sunshine upgrade, she said, flipping the lid. Butter caramel perfume filled the air. Taste my latest genius? He tossed the file aside, extended a hand, and hauled her onto his lap. She squeaked and looped her arms around his neck for balance. Adrian! We're in your office. Her cheeks burned as she tried to wriggle free. My building, my rules. He tightened his hold, buried his chin in the hollow of her shoulder, and inhaled like a man plugging into a charger. Wife-flavored recharge, efficacy confirmed. Still holding her, he speared a mini cake with a fork, but instead of eating it himself he lifted it to her lips. Chef gets first treat. Jane met the smolder in his eyes, worlds colliding, fireworks popping, and took a shy bite. Sweet? He asked, voice velvet rough. Sweet. She breathed, sure her entire body was blushing. Let me verify. He dipped his head, bypassed the cake, and sampled the whipped cream lingering on her lower lip. A slow, sugary kiss unfolded right there on the 66th floor. Outside, Chinemo hugged a stack of contracts, adjusted his glasses, pivoted on one heel, and retreated. Mental memo: threat level downgraded from blizzard to saccharine overload. Paperwork can wait, this dog food portion is mine to endure. Adrian's personal carrion feeding manual carries one golden rule: Jane must remain within eyeshot and arm's reach at all times. Kisses, cuddles, and spontaneous lifts are standard operating procedure designed to convince her she's treasured, pampered, and forever his crowned princess. And Jane? From must flee to can't leave, she's arrived at a simple verdict: backbone and dignity matter, but being cradled, spoiled, and hoisted sky high by the iceberg CEO who turns into a needy koala at home actually feels amazing. After all, who could turn down a man who's Arctic in the boardroom and a whipped cream devotee in the bedroom? She'll drink this syrup refill after refill, for life. Thanks for listening to today's story. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate it? If you liked the video, hit like and share it with friends. We can't wait to read your comments. Drop your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe for more sweet tales. See you next episode.